And a happy Monday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. It was quite a soggy into the weekend yesterday with widespread showers, even a couple of thunderstorms, one of which did pop up a brief severe tag, even had a little bit of tight rotation with it. National Weather Service didn't outline anything in the way of a tornado warning. However, we did see our fair share of some very gusty winds with that thunderstorm, along with even some small hail that did begin to pop up. So there was a lot of rain yesterday. There's no secret about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at your 48-hour rainfall totals, and we do have to go back over the course of 48 hours because the rain did get started a little bit more than 24 hours ago as of yesterday morning. And take a look at this. Everyone in Central Georgia got something in the way of rain. It's only northern areas of Jasper County that maybe only lucked out with about 1/4 of an inch, but for the most part, take a look at some of your totals. They are pretty substantial. Even the ones that I picked out right now, Milledgeville, about 7/10 of an inch of rain. That's the lowest number that we can pick apart. Most areas have a 1 or a 2 in front of some of the numbers, but we'll break it down piece by piece from north down to the south, where we will spot mainly some totals that at the very least got to around a 1/2 inch to about 3/4 of an inch of rain, which is still more than really what we've seen over the course of the last 2 months in general. A little isolated pocket of 2.5 inches of rain over here outside of Gray to the east in Jones County. This green shade is going to indicate widespread totals of at least an inch in nature. So down here in downtown Macon, 1.2 inches of rain, maybe not quite as much in the North Macon area, but down in South Bibb County, looks like over here to the west of I-75, a darker patch of green, indicating probably some totals pretty close to around 2 inches of rain. And then this isolated spot over here just outside of Roberta, actually really close to Lizella in the western end of Bibb County, right on that Crawford-Bibb County line, we saw a total of about 2.5 inches. And it does look like that we can find some totals 2.5 to even 3 inches at the very most in this patch of some yellow shades that we see mainly centered around Fort Valley over there in western Peach County. That's where we also saw some spotty areas of those yellow shades, even one over here getting just to the east of I-75, beginning to creep over into that western edge of Houston County. So 1.8 inches of rain in Warner Robins, down in Hawkinsville 1 inch, 1.6 inches in Eastman, 0.7 inches down in Cordele, another 0.7 over in Montezuma, and then we also see that total in downtown Dublin, 1 inch of rain down in McRae, and 1.8 just to the south of Soperton on the Montgomery and Treutlen County lines. So hopefully that gives you a good picture about how much rain exactly you got yesterday, and it really came in the form of kind of on and off showers throughout the entirety of yesterday. We did have some periods during the afternoon, maybe even into the morning hours, that was more consistent rainfall and even some batches of heavy rain that built in occasionally. But you were probably like myself and actually found yourself getting a couple glimpses of sunshine very briefly throughout the afternoon window just past lunchtime. Then after that, those wraparound showers and storms came back into the picture as we went into Sunday evening. But your total in Middle Georgia Regional Airport, 1.15 inches of rain. Take a look at what 1 inch of rain did for our kind of criteria for the month of February. We were down in the bottom of the very dry category and we got bumped up into the dry category. So yes, we could still, believe it or not, use some more rain here at Middle Georgia Regional Airport to get back to near normal. But 1 inch of rain did a pretty substantial number in terms of putting a dent in some of the dry conditions that we have had as of recently. So 1.23 inches total for the month of February so far. On average, we nearly get around 4.5 inches of rain for the month of February, and the record was set back in 2013, 13 years ago, that we had almost 13 inches of rain during the month of February. So if you were tuning into this extended forecast as of late last week, we did get a new update to our drought monitor, which did see some areas in Central Georgia worsen, specifically over in Upson County, portions of Lamar, Monroe, Crawford, and the northern sector of Taylor County. That's where you will find an extreme drought. That's going to be highlighted by this red color over all the way back into Columbus and some portions of East Alabama. That area did expand over into West Central Georgia. Everyone else, for the most part, does remain under severe drought conditions, which already says that you desperately could use some rain. And you will see some areas in the tan shade. That's going to indicate a moderate drought, not needing the rain quite as much as areas in the orange or the red, but you definitely still could use your fair share of rain. The only area that we are really trying to search for and hopefully get back to is, of course, areas of no color whatsoever, but we would look to get back to those abnormally dry conditions. which aren't technically drought conditions. Those really just say it's been quite a while without some rainfall, so hopefully we can continue to see some improvement on this as we go into this week's drought monitor update, which will take into account all of the rain as of tomorrow. So that means it will take into account some of those rain chances that we did get not only over this past weekend as of yesterday, but it will also take into account all of the rainfall that we did receive last Wednesday, which the totals weren't near as impressive as what we saw yesterday, but it is adding a little bit extra to some of the rainfall totals that we have seen over the past week. And I'm hoping to see some improvement with at least this latest update of the drought monitor when it comes out on Thursday morning, or it may be by the time we get into next week's drought monitor. It may take some time for maybe some of that improvement to settle in. But we have been in these drought conditions or just abnormally dry for quite a while since September 16th here in Bibb County. So obviously we are looking to put an end to that as we head into kind of a wetter portion of the calendar year as we get set to really begin the severe weather season as of the next couple of weeks, but may have just gotten an early start to it as of yesterday, where we did see that one lone severe thunderstorm warning and even some signs of some rotation. So obviously when we get some warmer temperatures in the forecast and you're starting to get into that springtime season, that's when we really do mark the beginning of our severe weather season. And right now, it kind of looks like we're off to a premature start of spring. It's going to be a dry stretch of weather to start the work week, very thankfully after yesterday. But then we will have a few shower chances as we go into the back half of the work week and into the beginning of the weekend. We'll break down where your rain chances do stand as of right now, because to be honest, the long-range models are all over the place. So kind of believing what one says over the other, that's not going to really get you anywhere. So we'll talk about some relatively low rain chances as it does currently stand, but those rain chances are definitely written in pencil. And then could we push 80 degrees for some high temperatures this week? That's looking to be the case as we go into the end of the work week, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But it was a bit of a cloudy start today as we kick-started your Monday morning. Very thankfully, a lot of you didn't have to head out to work, didn't have to head out to school since it is the President's Day holiday. But those folks that did, you were greeted to plenty of clouds in the sky, especially over to the west. And that's where we continue to have at least a couple of cotton balls that are over there as we look to the west here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. And along with that, we do have a bit of a light breeze, somewhat of a northern component to it because the flags are blowing from right to left, and this camera once again does face over to the west. Actually looks like a cloud is directly in between the sun and the surface right now at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, because we were getting a glimpse of some of that shade right there in real time. So temperature map all across the eastern United States. It is pretty interesting right now. 61 degrees in Macon, a little bit warmer than Montgomery, a little bit warmer than Charleston, but take a look at this. Areas like Kansas City, St. Louis, up into Wichita, these areas that are typically well colder than down here in the southeast, they're hovering in the mid-60s already. So it does look like we have a warmer air mass that is kind of settling in, at least across portions of the Central Plains, maybe getting into the Missouri Valley region of the country and down here into the deep southeast. But the colder air does remain present up into areas near the Great Lakes, getting up into the mid-Atlantic and of course New England. 46 in Washington, 38 in Virginia Beach. And I think 38 takes the cake for the coldest temperature that we can spot. Obviously, you see Green Bay and Minneapolis up there behind the banner. Can't quite see those numbers. I imagine they're colder than 38 degrees, but the number within view that is the coldest, that goes to Virginia Beach, something we typically don't see this time of year. 72, that's your warmest number, and that goes down to the southern tip of Texas over in Laredo. Down here in the southeast United States, good mix of the 50s and the 60s. It's even pretty warm up in Rome right now. Rome warmer than Atlanta and in Athens, where we can see maybe a patchy area of some of that light blue color. We did have a bit of a wedge setup this morning, and what we mean by that is that northeasterly breeze propelling a cooler and a drier air mass down into central Georgia, mainly into northeast portions of the state. That's typically what we see when we see high pressure centered to the north of us in the Appalachian Mountains. They kind of act as a bit of a dam, if you will, or a riverbank. Think about the water on the side of a riverbank. It obviously can't go over that riverbank unless you are to get more rainfall or some flooding of sorts, but that riverbank guides the water farther downstream. So what those Appalachian Mountains are doing, kind of think of that as the riverbank, and that's allowing for that water, or in this case, the cooler air, to filter down into areas in the deep southeast. But not really seeing too much temperature difference anymore. We are maybe seeing some slightly cooler numbers up to the northeast, but mid and upper 50s compared to some areas that are just now climbing above that 60-degree mark. Even a 54 at the coolest over in Butler, but that's also kind of telling the story that we do have more clouds present over to the west compared to over to the east. So that's why some areas like Butler and Thomaston are still hovering a little bit cooler than the rest of the bunch. So there is a steady breeze right now, some gusts all the way up to 22 miles per hour that we do spot in Vidalia, 18-mile-per-hour gusts in Swainsboro, 17-mile-per-hour gusts all the way down in Crisp County. But for the most part, your sustained winds anywhere from around 3 to maybe 10 or 12 miles per hour. And some of those occasional gusts have the potential to climb up to 20 miles per hour if you are in some of these yellow shades. So I imagine some portions of Wilkinson, maybe Washington and Johnson counties are popping up some occasionally gusty winds that are seeing that yellow shade right now. And would you look at this satellite imagery? Cloud cover over in areas like Taylor County, portions of Crawford County, portions of Upson, Lamar, Monroe counties. Like we were just talking about, those numbers slightly cooler than the rest of the bunch because they have the cloud cover. And as you get into the hours of daylight, that cloud cover is blocking some of that sunshine, which contributes to the surface heating. So you are not necessarily seeing that in areas like Butler, over to Roberta, maybe into Montezuma and Oglethorpe, down into Upson County, and then getting into southwestern Monroe County, areas like Culloden and up into Lamar County, specifically in Barnesville. So satellite and radar does show maybe a few clouds, really just over in west and southwest Georgia. This little batch right here as you go up I-85 from Atlanta up towards Greenville, and then some down here in the southeast corner of the United States as you make your way down I-95 getting into the Jacksonville area. There's your fair share of scattered cloud cover in the southeast United States, and that's also what's creating a bit of a temperature difference in a select few spots all in this corner of the country. But let's go ahead and circle back to yesterday where, believe it or not, at some point either early yesterday morning or maybe even late last night, we got down to a low temperature of 50 degrees. So once again, these temperatures, the low and the high, are not necessarily going to be reminiscent of the morning or the afternoon time frame. We can hit our low temperature at different portions of the day, but over the last 24 hours, the low temperature that we did see during the duration of your Sunday was 50 degrees. 68 was your high temperature, so I imagine that was driven by maybe some of those peaks of sunshine we were talking about in the early afternoon. And along with that, the increase in moisture content. That low pressure center really passed kind of directly over us here in central Georgia, maybe just to the north of us, and it's in a big influx of moisture. And sometimes you don't even need peaks of sunshine to lead to a temperature warm up, say into the 60s, when the dew point temperatures do get an increase up somewhere into the 60s as well. So 63, your average high temperature this time of year, 39, your average low. Looks like those numbers remain unchanged from the end of last week. 82, the record back in 1989. 1943, 16 degrees. That's your record low temperature. Didn't really get close to either breaking the record low temperature or the record high temperature as of this past weekend. But we did finally put a tally on the rainfall portion of this almanac. 1.15 inches of rain, like we were just showing you on some of the earlier graphics. So your year departure of rain, it is down to around 3 inches below where we should be at this point of the year, but that is kind of beneficial. We would see this number very likely above 4 inches below where we should be. This would be a -4 in front of the numbers, so we did put a little bit of a dent in it, but obviously we need some totals maybe up to about 3 or 4 inches in order to put this number back around where we should be on average. I think it's going to take a couple of substantial weather makers in order to do that, and it's actually going to have to come one after another, really. We're going to have to get the frequency of these systems that cause some widespread rain up before we can start talking about we're around where we should be at this point of the calendar year, but we are still continuing to start 2026 off on a fairly dry note. Sunrise yesterday was at 7:18 and the sunset was at 6:20 p.m. So we now have just over 11 hours of daylight, and then we are going to work our way back to around 12 hours of daylight as we go into the near future, and eventually we will get more hours of sunshine as opposed to more hours of nighttime. So over the last couple of days, we've had our fair share of eventful weather stretches, but believe it or not, it hasn't stopped one thing. We are now at a streak of 7 days in a row where we've had above average high temperatures. Even despite the cloudy skies, even despite rain in the atmosphere, we saw some temperatures in the mid to the upper 60s. Thursday into Friday, into Saturday, and all the way into yesterday, which marked the second consecutive day in a row where we had a high temperature of 68 degrees. So your tally for above average days for the month of February, now nearly double what we've had in terms of below average days. And that was mainly present just during the first week of the month, where we're still trying to hold on to a bit of that very frigid cold Arctic spell that we did in the month of January with. So it does look like we are going to continue this streak and make it 8 days in a row with some above average temperatures. We did have some morning fog this morning, but it wasn't necessarily too dense in nature. It was more of a story of a mostly cloudy atmosphere that is beginning to clear out. So sunny with a light breeze through the rest of your President's Day afternoon. Like I mentioned, gusts up to 20 miles per hour could be possible. And then there's that high temperature. 70 degrees for a high temperature, which we don't even need to get to the 70 degree mark to be above average, but it does look like your average high has ticked up 1 degree, now up to 64 degrees later this afternoon. Nonetheless, it is going to be slightly above average once again, full of sunshine, a bit of a light breeze, and these numbers are only going to get warmer as we go into the tail end of your work week. So here's a look at your hour by hour warm up. Topping out at 67 degrees, which makes me pretty confident that we'll go a little bit above this like we have been doing over recent days, and we will start to flirt with that 70 degree mark later on this afternoon. 66 and then eventually getting down into 63. I think the numbers will be a little bit warmer during the beginning of your evening time frame, as I am forecasting them to get a little bit higher than what they will sit at around 3, 4, and 5 o'clock. So surface map wise, not too much going on in the eastern United States now. It does look like we are going to continue to watch this high pressure build in. And this is a big reason why we have seen maybe something that has been indicative of a wedge setup, because of this clockwise rotation courtesy of the high pressure. And that is filtering in some winds coming down from the east and then eventually the northeast on the bottom half of the center of high pressure. So that's why we do have a bit of a northeasterly breeze right now. But our active weather this weekend, we did mention it was caused by a center of low pressure, and now that has moved off the Atlantic coast. It's just over to the east of states like Maryland, Delaware, or just kind of to the southeast of Philadelphia. And you can get a really good depiction of the circulation this is causing. This low pressure center kind of causing an oval of counterclockwise rotation. And this was a big reason why we saw that wraparound precipitation yesterday afternoon, because the front passed through a little bit earlier in the day, but then this rotation behind the frontal boundary led to some more moisture on the top of the center of low pressure getting dragged down on the backside of it. And that's why we did see another round of showers and a couple of storms into the later hours of yesterday. But that is a thing of the past now. It's getting out of the picture, and we're not looking at any more implications from that low pressure center in your forecast as we go throughout the next couple of days. In fact, just go ahead and get used to a whole lot of nothing for your Monday and your Tuesday. We're talking about mostly sunny skies, maybe not completely clear. We will have an occasional cloud or two that passes through tomorrow. Overall, I do expect some mostly sunny skies and plenty of blue color being visible each and every afternoon for at least today and into tomorrow. Now, as we go into Wednesday, there's a few changes in light of an increase in cloud cover for the morning. So a bit of a gloomy start. And there's not going to be a sole point throughout Wednesday that we are going to be maybe mostly cloudy. We are going to have occasional passing cloud cover. But within some of these clouds, you are going to notice maybe a very small chance of seeing a sprinkle shower. That's just what happens this time of year. When you get some warmer temperatures, you get more humidity in the forecast, you'll steadily start to see some rain showers pop up, working off the heat of the day. Because when you heat the surface more and more and you start to have more moisture available at the surface, it leads to a lot of lifting. We call that the convective process, which you probably have heard me talk about a lot as of maybe last summertime when I'm doing this stream. That convective process is basically just means warm air rises, cold air sinks. So as that warm air down at the surface, that the surface is heating up, it's going to lift all that moisture up into the sky, and that's what can form at least a few spotty sprinkle showers kind of during this time of the year. It is more enhanced during the summertime, and that's why we start talking about pop-up thunderstorms, because we are super hot, we are super humid. The warmer and warmer that you get leads to quicker rising motion, and there's more water at the surface in order to work with some more humidity that time of year. But enough of the science lesson. The main thing you need to know about Wednesday, just some partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies, and you will have about a 10% chance of a sprinkle. And it looks like for the first couple of hours going into Thursday, that is also going to be the case for the fourth day out of the work week. So here's a look at your future view wind gusts. We will have some gustier winds over to the east and southeast throughout today, maybe an occasional gust up to 20 miles per hour. Overall, as we continue into the afternoon and evening, that breeze does subside. Nothing really in the way of gusty winds tomorrow. We might have an occasional gust up to 10 miles per hour, but it's Wednesday that we start to get a bit gustier in nature, and that's mainly in the afternoon. Some gusts up to 20 to 25 miles per hour possible, and then we go all the way into Thursday where we could have a little bit of a slight breeze lingering, but nothing in the way of super gusty winds looks to be in store over the next 3 days. So 70 degrees for that high temperature today. I think we'll hover around the same number as we go into tomorrow, 71 for a high temperature. But the difference between tomorrow and today, number one, you might see a spotty cloud or two, but that's not too much of a difference. It will still be a forecast dominated by sunshine tomorrow. But 38 degrees, going to start out a little bit chillier in the upper 30s, around where we should be this time of year. Remember, your average low sits at 39 degrees, so your temperature is going to return a little bit closer to average for the morning low. Your afternoon high temperature is still going to run a couple degrees above that average high of 64 degrees. And then we go into Wednesday as we get more clouds in the forecast overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. That's what leads to a slightly warmer temperature to walk out the door to on Wednesday compared to what you see on Tuesday. Then 74 for a high temperature on Wednesday afternoon. Even despite the increase in cloud cover, we'll still receive plenty of sunshine, which is why I kind of went with a partly cloudy icon. Those peaks of sunshine allow for a warm up into the low and maybe even potentially the mid 70s as we head into the afternoon, and holding on to a very small 10% chance of a sprinkle. And 10%, once again, honestly overshooting it. Those are just days that we want you to be on guard for maybe coming across a sprinkle shower and not to be completely unprepared for. It's nothing to even bring the rain jacket out for. It's just a very brief and short-lived light shower if you do see anything whatsoever. And it's just going to be in those areas that hold on to a little bit of cloud cover throughout the day on Wednesday. But then the numbers just continue to go up. How about 78 and 79 for high temperatures Thursday into Friday? We're making a push towards the 80-degree mark. In fact, we even have some models that are calling for the low 80s as we go into Friday afternoon. So we very well could see these numbers bump up to having an 8 in front of them instead of a 7. But overall, the main thing that you need to know is Thursday and Friday, they're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of around 15 degrees above this average high of 64 degrees. As far as your morning lows go, there's not too much change with them. Overall, they will go down to their lowest tomorrow morning, but then it's just a steady warming trend, exactly like what you see with your afternoon high temperatures. 54 for for a low temperature on Thursday, 61 as we go into Friday. And that may be because of some cloud cover overnight into the early morning hours, but also as the temperatures get warmer, we are looking at a little bit more moisture in the forecast, and I think that's also going to help contribute to some warmer values to walk out the door to. 61 degrees for a morning low, you don't need any form of layering whatsoever. It's going to feel like a very nice forecast already from the get-go when you step out the door. So going into Thursday afternoon, the long-range models, like I was mentioning, they continue to really be all over the place right now. You'll see some spotty shades of blue. You'll see some patchy areas of some green. Overall, whatever you see in the way of rain chances, not that impressive for Thursday. So I've kind of went with a very similar forecast for Thursday as what we do see on Wednesday. That's where we're going to have some on and off cloud cover. You'll have about a 10% chance of seeing a sprinkle, but overall it's more of a story of those well above average high temperatures. And then as we go into Friday morning, it looks like maybe a more organized weather system trying to take shape, maybe something in the form of a frontal boundary. And you can see that the European model shows a bit more widespread rain than what the GFS does in green as we go into the afternoon. Still not necessarily agreeing on the timing and not hinting at some widespread coverage of that rain here in central Georgia. But then we go into Saturday, and the GFS is trying to organize some kind of band of some widespread rain, number one, maybe even some storms in the northern portion of Georgia, getting up into the Carolinas. I'm not putting too much stock into this because this is only what the GFS is saying. The European model has none of this playing out over the course of this weekend. So I've still elected for a fairly low chance of rain, but Friday and into Saturday, that's going to be when your more impressive rain chances are going to be, but it's still only about a 20% as compared to a 10% chance of rain. And the only reason I gave the difference in those chances of precipitation is because those rain chances on Friday and Saturday look to have some kind of organizational component to it. It looks like some kind of weather system is trying to take shape. So that's why I was a little bit more confident in those rain chances, but still, it's anyone's best guess as to what's to happen as we go into the weekend. National Weather Service website is calling for 40 and 50, maybe even 60% chances of rain, but I'm just not seeing that according to the current model data that we do have. And it looks like maybe a few spotty sprinkles try to hang around into the first part of your Sunday, but then eventually we will dry out for the end of the weekend and into the beginning of next week as we go into Monday. So I think the main thing that you need to focus on right now is staying up to date with the latest forecasts, of course, so we can fine tune these rain chances as we get into the end of the work week and the beginning of your weekend. Otherwise, it's a steady warming trend day by day. 70 into 71 into 74, 78, and then 79 at the peak of the roller coaster on Friday. Then we start to drop the numbers down just a little bit, which makes me think that some form of a frontal boundary passes through as we go into the weekend ahead, which does make sense. We were seeing signs of one trying to form that brought those Friday rain chances. Well, maybe it's starting to slowly usher in some slightly cooler air into the forecast as we go into Saturday. But then as we roll into Sunday, that's where we actually start to see a dip in the numbers. And it's really going to more so maybe be a little bit in the morning lows, but the afternoon highs get back down below 70 and about where they should be this time of year. I imagine your average high temperature will probably creep up to around 65 degrees as we roll into your Sunday afternoon, but 66 degrees for a high temperature paired up with some partly cloudy skies, maybe about a 10% chance of a sprinkle as of right now. That's going to be a great forecast. None of these rain chances are worth canceling any plans that you do have outdoors as of right now. Maybe you want to go catch a Mercer baseball game. Maybe you want to go watch some college baseball teams elsewhere up in Atlanta. Go watch the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Watch the Dogs up at Foley Field. I still think that you should go ahead and continue to keep your weekend plans. Just stay updated with the forecast. I know we say that all the time, but it's not to take away from the fact that things always do change with your weather. In fact, when I was doing my extended forecast last Friday, we were talking about the weekend chances. I was not even confident in anything besides a few rumbles of thunder, but that changed as soon as we got into Saturday morning, where we saw an SPC risk that was expanded, even a level 2 in our southernmost counties. And in fact, our lone severe thunderstorm warning, it came in a level 1 shaded area, not even a level 2 shaded area. So things can and will change with the forecast. That's why we always tell you to continue to stay up to date. It's not something that right now you need to stay updated with around the clock. Just tune back in to this extended forecast tomorrow at 11 a.m. We'll have a better idea, hopefully, of what's going on as we get towards the weekend, but we may not, and we'll continue to communicate that effectively as we get closer and closer to try to help you fine-tune those weekend plans that you do have. But in terms of the fall spring, it's continuing to roll on. In fact, we are dealing with temperatures all throughout this week that are very similar to last week. However, even a little bit warmer as we go into the end of the work week. Signs of, yes, seeing a little bit of a cool down, but I'm not seeing anything substantial that would say maybe confirm the groundhog's prediction of 6 more weeks of winter. So far, that has not been the case. Ever since Mother Nature heard about those predictions, she said, not so fast. I'm going to give you a premature taste of spring. And we're very thankful for it. But obviously, when the temperatures get warmer, I did mention it, you can get more moisture in the forecast, and that can lead to more effective rainmakers, which we desperately could use, but they also might come at the cost of having a severe weather risk as well. But not seeing any signs of those throughout the work week. This week, it's just going to be a story of some very warm temperatures that you are going to want to soak up while they last, because it is important to note, while we are in the tail end of February, we're getting ready to cross over into March. 33 days until the official start of spring, and once we get into that official start of spring, I'll feel more confident that we won't see a big major cool down in store, but we don't see any signs of that even in the extended forecast, so that is going to be good news. Hopefully we can roll into the month of March on a very warm note and not deal with too much of a severe weather risk, but just be prepared because those severe weather systems will continue to come a lot more frequently over the next couple of months. So that's going to do it here for your extended forecast this Monday. Like I said, you have weekend plans. You want to know what's in store for Friday and Saturday. Continue to tune back in each and every day at 11 a.m. We'll be breaking down your forecast in depth and help you fine tune that forecast so you can enjoy any outdoor plans with friends and family. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.